You didn't miss the signs. That's what hurts the most, because deep down, you saw them, you just didn't call them what they really were. At the time, it didn't feel like something was wrong. It felt like something you could fix, something you could understand, something you could manage. And that's how it starts. Not with something obvious, not with something extreme, but with small moments that don't sit right. But you ignore them because they don't seem big enough to question everything. Like the way they would shut down over something small, get distant cold, or even leave without explaining anything. And you stayed there trying to understand what you did wrong, trying to adjust so it wouldn't happen again. And maybe you remember this, you were just being normal, talking, existing, living your moment. And suddenly they changed. Their mood shifted, their energy pulled away, and you felt it immediately. That tension in your chest, that feeling of something is off. But instead of questioning them, you questioned yourself. And that's where everything quietly begins. Because it wasn't just one moment. It was a pattern. Subtle, repeated, easy to explain away. They didn't like being confronted. They didn't like feeling exposed. They didn't like anything that didn't revolve around them. And you adapted, not because you were weak, but because you believed this was part of loving someone. So you gave space. You stayed quiet. You avoided conflict. You chose peace, even when that peace cost you your voice. And little by little, you started noticing something. You were always the one adjusting, always the one explaining, always the one trying to keep things stable. And them, they didn't move, they didn't bend, they didn't meet you halfway. But still, you stayed because leaving didn't feel like an option. Not then. Maybe you told yourself, this is just how relationships are. Every couple goes through this. It's not that serious, or maybe something even deeper. I chose this person. I can't just give up. And that thought alone kept you there longer than you should have stayed, because it wasn't just about them anymore. It became about everything you were trying to protect. The relationship, the future, the idea of a family, the life you'd already started building in your head, and walking away from that felt heavier than staying in something that didn't feel right, even from the beginning. And here's the part, almost. No one admits. Sometimes you knew, not in a clear way, not in a logical way, but in a feeling. In those moments where something didn't match, where the reaction didn't make sense, where the silence felt too heavy, where the distance felt intentional. And instead of trusting that feeling, you explained it away. You minimized it, you normalized it. Because accepting it would mean facing something you weren't ready to face. That maybe this wasn't what you thought it was. And that realization isn't easy. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the truth is, those weren't just random moments. They were signals, patterns, warnings that your mind tried to process, but your heart refused to accept. And the longer you stayed, the harder it became to leave, because it stopped being about what they were doing and started being about why you were still there. And then something shifts, not outside, inside you, because at some point it's no longer just about their behavior. It's about how you start reacting to it. And this is where everything becomes confusing, because the problem is not loud. It doesn't explode. It bends reality slowly, quietly, until you don't even trust your own perception anymore. You start noticing things, real things, clear things, like something that doesn't make sense, something that shouldn't be there, something that feels wrong. And when you bring it up, you don't get clarity. You get resistance, deflection, irritation. And suddenly, the focus is no longer what happened. It's how you reacted, how you asked, how you said it, how you made it a problem, and you feel it. That shift, that moment where you walked in with a question, and somehow you walk out feeling guilty. Even when you know you weren't wrong, and this doesn't happen once, it repeats in different forms, different situations, same outcome. You question, they react. You explain, they withdraw. You insist, they turn it around until the original issue completely disappears. And you're defending yourself for asking something you had the right to ask. And this is where the damage really begins. Not in what they did, but in what you start believing about yourself. Because after enough of these moments, you stop trusting your instinct. You start thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. And that right there is the moment you begin to disconnect from yourself because you felt it. You saw it. You knew something wasn't right, but you were trained, conditioned to doubt it, to silence it, to override it, in favor of keeping the peace. And the more you do that, the more you lose yourself. Because now it's not just about adjusting behavior, it's about adjusting identity. You start becoming someone you don't even recognize, more quiet, more careful, more anxious, more aware of their reactions than your own feelings. You choose your words, you measure your tone, you anticipate their mood, you prepare for their silence, and without realizing, you're not living anymore. You're managing the environment, managing the tension, managing them. So things don't escalate, and the scariest part is you get good at it, really good. So good that from the outside, everything looks fine. No fights, no chaos, no visible problem. But inside, you're exhausted because you're carrying something that was never yours to carry alone. And deep down, there's a feeling you can't explain. A quiet discomfort, a subtle anxiety, a sense that something is always about to go wrong. And maybe you remember this. That feeling of hesitation before saying something simple, before asking something normal, before just being yourself because you didn't know how it would be received. And that's not love, that's tension, that's emotional instability, that's walking on invisible lines. You were never supposed to walk, but you kept going because stopping would force you to face something you weren't ready to face, that this dynamic was not balanced, was not mutual, was not safe. And maybe the hardest part was not what they did. It was how alone you felt while still being in a relationship because you were there, fully there, trying, giving, holding, fixing. And they were there too, physically but not emotionally. Not in the way you needed, not in the way you deserved. And you felt that absence more than anything else. That invisible gap between what you gave and what you received. And instead of stepping back, you leaned in more. You tried harder, you gave more, you explained better. You became more patient, more understanding, more available, hoping that at some point they would meet you there, but they didn't. And slowly, very slowly, something inside you started fading. Not your love, not your intention, but your sense of self. Because every time you ignore your instinct, every time you silence your discomfort, every time you accepted something that didn't feel right, you moved a little further away from who you were. Until one day you look at yourself and something feels off. You can't explain it, but you feel it. That distance between who you used to be and who you became. And that realization doesn't come loud. It comes in silence, in small moments, in subtle thoughts. In questions like, when did I start accepting this? When did this become normal? When did I stop being me? And the truth is, you didn't lose yourself all at once. You lost yourself in small permissions, small silences, small justifications that felt harmless at the time but added up into something you can't ignore anymore. And once you start seeing that, there's no going back to not knowing. And here's the part that changes everything. Not when it was happening, not when you were inside it, but now. Looking back with clarity, with distance, with honesty. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Not the patterns, not the imbalance, not the way everything was always leaning in one direction. Yours. And for a moment, that realization hurts. More than anything else, because it forces you to face something you spent so long avoiding. It wasn't mutual. It wasn't balanced. And deep down, you knew maybe not with words, but with feeling. With those quiet moments you ignored. With that discomfort you explained away. With that voice inside you that kept saying, "This doesn't feel right." But you stayed, not because you were blind. Not because you were weak, but because you believed in what it could be, in what it should be, in what you were trying so hard to build. And that's what makes it so hard to accept. Because you didn't imagine everything. You felt something real, but what you felt was your side of it. Your effort, your intention, your love, trying to sustain something that was never being built by two people. And that's the truth. Most people don't want to face it's easier to think. They changed. They stopped loving me. They became someone else. But what if they didn't change at all? What if they were always exactly who they were, and you were the one filling the gaps? Making it make sense, holding it together, giving meaning to something that on its own couldn't sustain itself. And when you stop doing that, everything collapses. Not because you broke it, but because it was never standing on its own. And that's the moment everything shifts. Not outside, inside you. Because now you're not asking, what did I do wrong? You're asking, why did I stay when it wasn't being returned? And that question is uncomfortable, but it's powerful because it brings you back to yourself, back to your awareness, back to your standards, back to your truth. And slowly you start remembering who you were before you started shrinking, before you started explaining, before you started accepting what didn't feel right. And that's where healing begins. Not when they apologize, not when they understand, not when they come back, but when you finally see clearly that it was never about you not being enough. It was about you giving to someone who wasn't capable of meeting you there. And that changes everything. Because now you stop chasing answers. You stop needing closure. You stop trying to make sense of something that never made sense. And for the first time, you choose yourself. Not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, firm, non-negotiable way. Where you no longer accept confusion as love silence, as peace effort without return as commitment. And that shift is what protects you going forward. Because now you don't ignore the feeling, you don't override the instinct. You don't stay where something feels off. You see it earlier, clearer, faster. And you don't need a big reason to leave anymore. The absence of what you deserve is reason enough, and maybe this wasn't the ending you planned. Maybe this wasn't the life you imagined, but seeing the truth is what gives you the chance to build something real. Next time, with someone who doesn't need to be carried, who doesn't need to be convinced, who doesn't need to be managed. Because real love doesn't make you feel confused. It doesn't make you feel small. It doesn't make you question your reality. It meets you. It supports you. It grows with you. And most importantly, it doesn't require you to lose yourself to keep it. So if any part of this felt familiar, if something here made you stop, even for a second, then I want to ask you something. Be honest with yourself. How many times did you ignore what you felt just to keep something alive that was already draining you? And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped doing that from now on? If this gave you clarity, save this video. You might need to hear it again. And if you know someone who's still stuck in this pattern, send it to them. Sometimes one perspective changes everything. And if you're ready to start seeing things differently, to stop repeating what once broke you, then stay here, because there's more you haven't seen yet.